he full well knows that a lot of what he does is to sell his products. And I mean, he always sticks in a product advertisement on the end of what he does now, doesn't he? Buy this new, this, that, and the other. So he's got a vested interest in keeping up appearances. So I don't know. I'm not 100% certain. I think a lot of these people might have started off believing what they believed, and then kind of it doesn't matter anymore now because they're doing so well at it.
Poison and a sneaking suspicion that the end is coming soon. So I pulled back the curtains and I looked out the window, only to discover that my fears are coming true. Yeah, it's true. Now we're standing at the end of the world, my friend, and there's nothing we can do about it now. Yeah, we're standing at the end of the world, my friend. Watch it all burn down. Yeah, we're gonna watch it all burn down.
Right, and hello everyone. Welcome back to Trolley with Logic. I know you didn't expect to hear back from us so soon, and yes, this show is pre-recorded. I'll go quickly into the reasons we're back. Mainly, we did an interview I did an interview a few months ago with the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and I just found out the other day that they've published said interview, and so we just thought, yeah, we better do something. And also, the show's going to be changed up a little, as you can already see, doing all this pre-recorded. And yeah, so I think the first big change is, like I say, I won't be around to host all the time. College is just demanding too much of my time, but I will be here to help out as much as I can. And so it'll give me great pleasure to kind of do this sort of handing of the mic ceremony over to person you're quite familiar with. You're still fairly new to the show, but I think everyone can say I think the mic's going to be in good hands. Nathan, here you go.
Thank you. This is Trolling with Logic for October 30th, 2016. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Yeah, it's good to be here, and as I say now, Nathan, you've got the dubious, I don't know if it's a burden or an honor, it's a bit of both at times of being the new host, so everyone, please be nice to Nathan in the comments.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah. And, yeah, so with that, Nathan, shall we... Yeah, well, I'll just try and get this out of the way. So, as you probably noticed, the team has changed up quite a lot. Some of the old team, they just can't make it. Mortimer's got very pressing real-life stuff. I think if you're friends with Mortimer on Facebook, you know what I mean. I think he's going to make a video about it at some point. But we shall quickly get on to introducing the new look team and welcoming Jenn. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you very much.
And welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And probably a sort of familiar face. She's called in a few times before. Julia, how are you doing?
Hey, great. How are you?
Oh, we're doing grand. And I think, like I said, also with the introduction, we'll just get a little bit of information each. So Nathan, give us a little bit of information about yourself to the audience, because I think they always wonder why we're speaking on these subjects and what right we have to speak on them. So I think we'll go with you, Nathan, first. This is your introduction.
All right, well, I went to college in Southern Oregon to study journalism as my major and philosophy as my minor. So I've got a good mix of knowledge and background on reporting on current events and things that are going on in the world, and also how to think logically and reasonably and critically. That's where philosophy comes in. That's my academic background, and there's not much to say about me other than my academic background in terms of qualifications.
And so how did you get into the whole skepticism thing?
I read books shortly after I started college in my freshman year. I read books by James Randi in particular, and that got me interested in skepticism. It occurred to me that there's not a lot of critical thinking in the media these days, and skepticism and critical thinking about the world is a good asset to have for any journalist, and that's something I'm really passionate about, is bringing a level of a more rigorous level of accuracy to the discipline of journalism, and encouraging
Daily Mail.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm very critical of alternate media, which we're going to discuss on this show, I think.
Yep.
And citizen journalists, who are people who have no background in journalism, who are going around saying they're journalists, but in reality they're conspiracy theorists, who brand themselves as investigative reporters when they're not, to lend themselves legitimacy. And I'm also very critical of the mantra that's taught in a lot of journalism schools today, that there's no right or wrong answer to anything, and everything's equal, and the false balance problem that you see in a lot of media.
All right, great. And Jen, here's your little soapbox moment now.
All right, thank you. Well, I first got into skepticism probably because I've been a long-term skeptic of religion in general. And from that, I also had a boyfriend who was into conspiracy theories. So I got to see firsthand the whole 9/11 truther movement, anti-GMO, etc., from my ex, who was constantly looking into this on a day-to-day basis and telling me the new conspiracy theories. And he was very much into it. And at one point, I also bought into that kind of stuff before I actually had time to start looking into it properly. And from that, of course, I saw a lot of people like Alex Jones and Mike Adams and various other people in that particular movement firsthand, and got to understand the kind of rubbish that gets pushed on you, the kind of completely unskeptical rubbish that gets pushed onto you through those particular movements and circles. And that got me into skepticism itself and into joining a skeptics group, which then grew my interest in understanding things on a more rational basis.
All right, cool. And Julia, time for your introduction.
Right. I have a biology degree. I recently, actually, just last month, got my master's degree, so I'm really happy about that. How I got into skepticism is, well, so my parents are kind of hippies. I've had a very kind of new age woo kind of thing growing up around me. Like I wasn't vaccinated as a child, things like that. But I already always was an atheist. I never really believed in a religion. So when I got on Facebook, I joined a couple of atheist groups, and through that, actually, I started to also question the New Age stuff, and also through my degree, started to learn about immunology and how vaccines work, things like that. So that I learned a lot that way, and I want to bring that further to other people as well.
All right, great. And so Nathan, you're now officially the host, so take it away. You've got the agenda there.
Yeah, first on the agenda is Jack Chick, and Jack Chick is a notorious Christian cartoonist who died a week ago today, October 23rd. He was 92 years old, and he spent a huge portion of his life publishing small religious tracts known as Chick tracts. They're everywhere. Most people are familiar with them. Most atheists and skeptics, anyway, are familiar with them. And
I'm just going to butt in here. My first experience was when I was very much when I was in kind of, I don't know, well, when I was in school, basically, we got handed them by the teachers, because they would have evangelical ministers come to our classes sometimes to warn us of the evils of, and it was mostly Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and still never played, but it was a lot of that, and there was some stuff about heavy metal music. I remember that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, just to add another little anecdote, you've heard this one, and I know it, but this is when I got into serious trouble in school. Was he was giving us this long lecture, and he went on about a teenage boy he knew that had killed themselves over an Iron Maiden record. And then I think Jenn might understand this. This was the time when Bruce Dickinson had left the band. So, and I just instantly replied to, well, the new stuff's not that bad, surely. But yeah, needless to say, that wasn't the reaction he wanted to the story of this tragic suicide. So yeah, I couldn't see it. But yeah, I remember these really well. Jenn, have you come across them?
I hadn't actually come across Jack Chick until recently, until we started talking about it the other day. So I've been trying to read up a little bit on it, and
I think he's probably more well known, and his tracks are more well circulated in the US than anywhere else.
Yeah,
or if in the UK you grew up in a particular religious community like I did. Julie, have you had any experience with this?
Not until I started to kind of be in an atheist community a little bit, so I kind of heard of it, but it was never a big part of my life.
Yeah, well, they are quite interesting cartoons to read, because when you're a child, it's all, if this is evil and you're going to burn in hell, and there's quite graphic depictions of hell and everything. It was kind of quite traumatizing for a lot of people I've heard. That's kind of the main thing. A lot of atheists have said they grew up with it and they were scared. They couldn't sleep for, nights afterwards.
Yeah, like I mentioned in one of my posts, I vividly remember reading my first chick tract when I was 8 or 9 years old, and it was from trick-or-treating on Halloween. The people whose house we went to would put the chick tracts in with the bag of candy. So that's how I was first exposed to it, and I had nightmares for days afterwards. And now as an adult, I look at them as really campy entertainment.
Wow, when we were kids, we used to have garbage pail kids.
Yeah, we had that over here, but like I just said, we just remember getting these handed out, and also in church as well. Excuse me. Carry on, guys. I'm gonna have a coughing fit, so I'm gonna have to go off mic for a second here.
It's quite funny seeing some of the stories that have been written about this guy afterwards as well. Like one of them is titled "Evangelical Cartoonist Jack Chick was the Dr. Seuss of Habelet."
Yeah, Dark Dungeons was a big one. Cal just mentioned Dungeons and Dragons being one of his most hated and feared things that he went after. And his tract Dark Dungeons is probably the one he's most famous for, and the one that atheists love the most, because in it he depicts Dungeons and Dragons as the gateway game to occultism and Satanism. The characters in the story, in the tract, are D&D players. One of them does really well in the game, and the dungeon master approaches her and says, "You've been selected to become a part of the Coven," and which is a secret society of witches that D&D players who excel in the game are initiated into. And then there's a character who kills herself because her character dies in the game. And
wow.
It's crazy.
You would have hated Stranger Things.
Oh, yeah.
Did he write anything about Stranger Things before he died? I wonder if he did. That'd be interesting.
He was quiet the last few years, wasn't he? There wasn't much coming from him.
A lot of the more recent tracks in recent years have been ghostwritten by his company. I don't think he actually produced a lot of content in recent years.
Yeah, I mean, they are kind of a cultural oddity now. I think most folk view them as.
Yeah.
Because he did have some. I mean, a lot of people think they've just been sort of a bit eulogized. He was talented. He was an okay artist, and he probably could have worked on some comic strips or something. But he made a fortune with these. Because there's like 750 million of them have been distributed or something. They reckon It's like some ridiculous number.
Yeah, plus he had his own publishing company, and several really fringe authors got published through his company. People with really crazy out there ideas that are really on the fringe. And he also had a run of comics that are not as well known as Chick Tracts, but they're called the Crusaders comics, and they're still in circulation. Issue 22 just came out, I believe, but they tell a bit longer stories dealing with fundamentalist paranoia ideas. My favorite is one called Spellbound, and that's also about anti-rock and about witches and warlocks who take the master tapes from bands recording their music, and they bless them with demonic spirits, and so the demonic spirits enter the master tapes, and that's how they use mind control to control the masses.
All right. Yeah. I don't think there's much more I can add to that. Really, it's just it's a weird glimpse into the kind of evangelical minds. These cartoons.
I wonder if he believed all of it, given also that he made so much money off of it, and if he believed it, where is he getting those ideas that those are the kind of things that really happen?
Yeah, I think he did. I think he was sincere in his beliefs in all of these things. Otherwise, it's just for the sheer amount of time and the amount he did of them. It's kind of like I say, it's always difficult to keep up an act so long and not slip at least once.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like people say, about Mike Adams or Alec Jones. Do you think they're playing it? And I say, well, they would have at least kind of slipped up by now a little bit. I think they all do genuinely believe what they're spouting, these guys. Whereas guys who do...
Yeah, and plus when people pretend like that, a lot of times they cave under pressure. Eventually they'll say stuff like, oh, I was just playing a character, or it was just satire. Eventually they'll cave under the public attention they get that they don't necessarily want.
Perhaps if they don't have the kind of support that they do. I mean, Alex Jones, for example, has got a massive amount of support that he's been drumming up for years and years and years. And he full well knows that a lot of what he does is to sell his products. And I mean, he always sticks in a product advertisement on the end of what he does now, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Buy this new, this, that, and the other. So he's got a vested interest in keeping up appearances. So I don't know. I'm not 100% certain. I think a lot of these people might have started off believing what they believed, and then kind of it doesn't matter anymore now because they're doing so well with it.
Yeah. Plus, there's the issue of investment, where they invest so much time and energy throughout their lives to some things that they can't really. There's no going back. Yeah. They have to carry on.
Yeah, and why not? I suppose. I mean, if you're rolling in the fucking Benjamins as a result of this, then you're not going to care, are you? I mean, Alex Jones, I don't know what his net wealth is at the minute, but he's doing pretty well for himself.
Oh, yeah.
If his rapid expansion is anything... Well, no, that's horrible silence.
Yeah.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, moving along, Nathan.
Yeah, next up in our agenda is the kangaroo court known as the Monsanto Tribunal that's currently going on.
I think it is finished now. They delivered their verdict, if you want to call it that.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right. This was a couple weeks ago.
Yeah.
That happened October 14th, I believe.
Yeah.
And their verdict is nothing surprising. We already know what their verdict was going to be before the tribunal ever started. Because they were mainly interested in controlling the campaign and controlling who attended the assembly and not allowing dissenting voices to enter into the conversation.
Yeah. Well, I think someone actually put it like this, kind of how, Mike Adams, and then they think they put on a lab coat and they're a scientist. Well, these people rent a room out in The Hague and they think they're a legal court suddenly. I mean, that's pretty much what's happened here.
They invested £500,000 into erecting this tribunal, which isn't recognized by the international organization that oversees these kinds of trials, even though they claim that they're under the auspices of I can't remember the name of the international organization that they're claiming.
Yeah, I think I know what you're on about. It slipped my mind as well. But I think we can bring in Julia. You've got some words about this tribunal as well. Julia? Yeah, there you are.
Yeah. Not a whole lot. I just I looked up a couple of articles yesterday to kind of prepare, but it sounds like they're basically yeah. I think the article I read, they said that they were so they took the guidelines from the court, from the Hague court and from the UN, and say, okay, we're going to go by these guidelines, and kind of now we're a real court or something. That's basically it.
Yeah, and we're in The Hague, so we're legit as anything now.
Right, The Hague is what makes everything right.
Yeah, it's pretty much what they've gone for, and there's also the story this week. There was a pro-GMO scientist who registered to give evidence, but they struck him off. Well, they blocked him completely. Was he forcibly removed from it? I can't remember.
He was forcibly removed because he showed up even though his registration was canceled. And that was David Zarek, who writes for riskmonger.com, a really excellent website. And he's a pro-GMO and pro-agritech science communicator who's done a lot of work to promote biotech technology. And it didn't take long for the tribunal to kick him off the registry. I think he said in his article that they sent him the email the night before the event happened that they had knocked him off.
Yeah, and
did they give him a reason for it at all?
They thought that he was going to be disruptive of the proceedings, I think is the reason they gave.
Well,
but the real reason of...
As in he wasn't going to agree with them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Plus, the main thing is, if you're holding Monsanto on trial, you would think they would actually have people from Monsanto on the trial. But they didn't.
Yeah,
there was absolutely nobody there.
No,
Monsanto was an
declined.
absentee defendant.
They declined to be there.
Well, they offer. Did they just think it was a waste of time? Well, obviously it's going to be a waste of their time.
I think there was had a statement, or a part of a statement from Monsanto.
And plus, given what anti-GMO activists, so I think they would be worried about their safety going to something like this. I mean, I know kind of Vance has told us he's never had any issues with that, but this is really the fringe extremists of the anti-GMO crowd that got all this together. And I think, was it Vandana Shiva? She was the main mover behind this.
She was part of the organization, I think.
Yeah. And she's somewhat got really... She's another, and she's one I actually struggle to think that she actually believes. Like how we're talking about, do these folk believe what they're doing? And I think it's her act is so transparent at times, I think, with her. Playing the spiritual, kind of earthly, warm and fuzzy, kind of old Indian woman that's wise in the Eastern ways and that. It seems so put on for me, that.
Yeah, she appears in just about every anti-GMO documentary that comes out.
Yeah.
Was that Miles Power who called her like the Nicolas Cage of the anti-GMO activists?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's basically it. Because it's quite strange, because like I said, a few weeks ago there was a film festival on here in my town, and one of the films we were going to show is a thing called Seed, and it's bankrolled by Vandana Shiva. I was desperate to go to it. I went along on the night because they said someone from the film was going to be there to answer questions, and I PM'd loads of my pro-GMO friends to have stuff ready, and then the last minute there was a licensing issue, and I was just so gutted. But the claims on the flyer was that 98% of all the seed varieties have gone extinct now or something. I don't know if you've heard this one, Julia, have you?
Of that film?
No, just this claim. I think they say like 90% of natural seed varieties have now gone extinct, and there's only so many, and it's all kind of farm crops.
No, I have not heard that one. How? That makes no sense.
Yeah, it's almost surely an exaggeration.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find the claim right now. But yeah, the whole Monsanto trial is just from the outset. When I heard it described to me, I just knew, yeah, this isn't what they think it's going to be.
I got that email here from from when David Zurich was disinvited here.
Yeah.
It says, the aim of the People's Assembly is to discuss alternatives to industrial agriculture, and we don't think you share that aim. We also notice on your blog that you aim to disturb the program.
It's funny how they use language like that when what they really mean is you're going to disagree with us. They use phrases like you're going to disrupt the proceedings, and you're going to be a nuisance, and you're going to be loud or obnoxious.
Yeah, it's a very typical kind of conspiracy theorist comeback, which is what we get on Flat Earth chat all the time. I mean, when we talk to Flat Earthers, generally, if you get irritated with them, or if in any way you speak to them in which they deem that to be rude, or they feel like they're being put in a corner, they'll turn around and tell you, well, I wouldn't speak to you like that, you're being rude to me, that kind of thing. So they take offence to the way that you conduct yourself with them and use that as an argument against you. It's a bizarre type of ad hominem attack to try and discredit you as an individual because of the way you choose to actually converse with them, because if you're getting irritated.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, here it is. I found a claim. They say 94% of our seed varieties have disappeared in the last century.
Yeah, they don't talk about how many new ones have been created either, do they?
It's absurd.
Yeah.
And then there's of course this Svalbard seed vault that they bring into it as well, saying this is the doomsday vault, and that is because Monsanto are getting rid of all the biodiversity, and therefore they've got that as a backup, so that when they've killed everyone off with one single crop failure as a result of this biovirus that they're going to release to destroy all the food in the world and bring down the population to, what is it, 6 million people? I can't remember what this
I can't remember. There's various figures in this depopulation story here that they've kind of reduced the population.
The Georgia Guidestones that the conspiracy theorists are always whinging on about, I think it says bring the population down to 1 million.
I think it's a billion, is it not?
Is it a billion?
Yeah, I think that rings a bell. But I think that was that just someone saying that's kind of the capacity, like just for the natural resources to sustain a population for a long time or something.
Yeah, and plus I think those guidestones were erected by somebody who it was a wealthy patron of the state who just wanted to put up something provocative. It's kind of like the what is the event that Alex Jones has always been going on about, where the wealthy elites go into the Grove, the Bohemian Grove.
Right.
He makes a big deal about that when in reality it's just a big group of wealthy people who go into the woods and have a party, basically. It's the way they enjoy themselves. And it shows the lack of being able to sympathize with what people in a higher economic class do for fun.
Yeah, it's like someone's pointing out to me there that, Monsanto actually do hire biologists, and kind of biologists do sort of know that you need biodiversity. It's kind of a good thing to have.
Yeah, it's kind of part of the degree there.
Yeah, it's kind of vital for any biology to take place, diversity.
Of course, yeah.
There was another claim that was even more extreme in the trailer for the documentary Seed, where they said that Monsanto would come in the night to spray chemicals, and the next morning their children woke up and their pillows were bloody.
Oh yeah, that's why I was saying I was looking forward to it, because that's a brand new claim. And I think even some of the guys I spoke, like I said, we're still quite friendly with some of the Monsanto guys we've interviewed previously, and they were actually quite curious. Say, well, this is brand new. We've got to know what this is. Because that's they're actually quite, say, some of the claims we hear about us are just, they said, my God, I wish we could do some of some of this stuff is so far out there, so it'd be actually fairly impressive if we could pull off some of this stuff that's claimed about us.
The production values in the Seed documentary, based on what is in the trailer, they look pretty good, so I was surprised to find such fringy stuff in it. Like, I can understand if they use misleading numbers like the 98% seed diversity loss, but
it's
to throw that...
94%. I don't know where this is. This is a brand new claim, and I haven't heard this anywhere else. That's a new one, so I'd be very keen to know how they've come up with this. Because I've tried searching, but there's no real... All the sources lead back to the documentary, so...
Yeah, it probably originates with the documentary.
No idea where they would get an idea like that.
And I think it's like some gross oversimplification of some figures.
It's probably a new urban legend that's cropping up, the idea of Monsanto coming in the middle of the night, because it did feature prominently in the movie Consumed. Yeah. With the old farmer, was it Morgan Freeman in that movie?
Danny Glover, yeah.
Danny Glover, that's right. Danny Glover, the old farmer, oppressed, wakes up in the middle of the night, and the GMO goons are harassing him, driving around his farm in the middle of the night. Yeah. So that's starting to come up as a pop culture trope in the anti-GMO movement.
One film that's been very powerful as well, which I've spoken to a few people about and I've showed to a few people, is The World According to Monsanto, which is one in which it's a very, very one-sided story. It's very much anti-Monsanto. There's not really any kind of...
The main thing that came out when I saw that movie was actually just... I was amazed this woman can make a movie about her sitting at a computer screen. That's the bulk of this. It's kind of like, I think it was when I was looking up things about the making of the Spotlight movie, and there was interviews with the journalists. I said, how on earth they can make a film about our job? We don't know. Our job is just not film material. And then, because they say, oh, it's just us just sitting at computers all day, and this is what this woman's done. She's made a film out of her sitting at a computer for 2 hours.
I haven't seen that particular film.
Yeah. If you ever wanted to see journalism, the kind of real life movie, there it is.
Well, The World According to Monsanto is more about one where they're going around farms in America and also in India, is it, as well, talking about the pesticide and Roundup and the fact that Monsanto made Agent Orange, therefore they must be bad, and various other bits and pieces. It's quite convincing if you don't look at it with a skeptical mind, especially because of its completely one-sided nature.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the problem. That's the problem with the most prominent and the most highly rated online documentaries about Monsanto are this type. They are the demonization. There's very little out there with a voice on both sides.
Yeah. But, GMO, OMG takes some beating just for some of the scenes in it. I've actually watched it now, Nathan.
Oh, good.
And I kind of picked up on, because there's that part where he actually tries to go into the Monsanto offices and they tell him, no.
That is my favorite scene in the whole movie.
Yeah. So just as a background, he just tries to walk into the Monsanto HQ, and they're just like, who are you? Why are you here? No, you can't come in. You're not a guest. Go away. Which is just what would happen if you tried to walk into anyone's place of work just unannounced.
Yeah, and then he goes back to his car and said, "They're hiding something. They're not letting me in."
Wow. And the other part, Nathan, that I picked up on was you can see his wife is kind of getting visibly pissed off with him all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Saying,
that scene where they're at the roadside diner and he's pestering her about the food she's ordering.
Yeah, and her body language is, just stop with this filming shit. You've actually got a family here to look after as well.
Yeah, do you recall the part near the end when he actually, in his narration, he actually said that his wife and kids were becoming upset with him more and more? And
I wonder why.
He had that scene where he filmed his two little kids looking out the window at the ice cream truck, and they had these sad faces because he wouldn't let them get their ice cream.
You put that in a movie?
Yeah,
he put that in there, and what's hilarious is he's not that great of an editor, so there's some raw footage in there that gets left in the film, and that actually has unintentionally hilarious effects on skeptical viewers, at least. Like the scene where he's talking to his kids about ice cream. And he said, "Do you know that there's really bad stuff in the ice cream that you're eating?" And his kids are just munching down on it. "Oh, really? Oh, and it can hurt you years later when you're an adult." "Oh." And he's like, "Are you concerned about that?" And his kids are like, "Nope." Nom 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 nom.
Because they're kids with ice cream. Yeah. They're not going to be the most objective people on the views about ice cream, are they?
No.
But it is, like I say, that's the kind of highlight for me, is just you can see his wife getting visibly pissed off with him all the time. Like, if there wasn't a separation after that film, I'd be very surprised. Because you can see her getting more and more just kind of, give it a rest now. This is getting a bit weird for me.
Yeah. I need to finish my series on that.
Yeah. Because I think it is one, I think, for this kind of psychologists and that, just to analyse the body language and between his family and him through the film.
Yeah.
Alright, so I think we can carry on. I think this is our last topic. It's going to be a little bit of a shorter show this time, just because we're trying to get back into the swing of things. So we've got one last topic to go on.
Yeah, our last topic we're going to tackle is the alternative media.
Yeah. I think you're going to say but before you watch this, go and watch. I know some people hate this guy, but he's a great writer and he's a provocateur and all that, but that's Maddox. And go and watch his video about this beforehand. He does, sometimes I think he's completely wrong on things, but he is just, you can't take your eyes off his articles and his videos when he does that.
Mm-hmm. We should put a link to that in the description.
Yeah, I definitely will do. Because I know it's just like I'm saying, he does upset people at times, but he is very worth, he's someone that kind of gets your attention regardless.
Mm-hmm. And what he says in this particular video, which is the only video of his I've seen, is pretty much spot on. He talks about the idiocy of the alternative media, especially online. He goes after InfoWars, things like truthplanet.tv, is that the name of the website? And in the article version, he talks about the keywords that pop up in the URLs. Well,
the main point which he made, which he addressed it in a way I never thought of, was, you're fans of alt media, and we've all got friends on Facebook that say this, that, the mainstream media, or what they call the lamestream, is controlled by corporations.
Mm-hmm.
But as he puts it, because, then that kind of actually puts pressure on reporters to be good at their job, because they don't do it right, they'll lose their funding. I mean, and there is sometimes, but it always seems to get called out when journalists aren't, don't use their integrity.
Yeah, all the time. And the alt media crowd, the people who write for alt media, don't get called out on anything they put out.
Yeah, and they are free to just put out anything they feel like.
Yes, and Maddox also pointed out that they are also funded by corporations, many of them.
But in a weird way, because most of them are corporations themselves.
Yeah. Infowars is a copyrighted brand, I believe.
Yes. And yeah, well, kind of that, and that's the irony of it, that he gets so many millions, that he is basically a corporation on his own. But I say, like, he never gets fact-checked, he doesn't have to worry about, press standards or anything like that.
What do you think of people who started off on websites like Infowars and then sort of built up their own little empires, like Paul Joseph Watson, prisonplanet.tv? I remember him first starting off with Alex Jones, or that's how it seemed anyway back in the day.
Well, my opinion of him is, I can't see the appeal of that guy. Alex Jones, I said he's one of these guys. Regardless, he's an entertaining watch.
Yeah, he
has the charisma and he knows how to sell himself. Whereas that Paul Joseph Watson, I just cannot stomach watching that guy at all. There's a lot
of people who kind of say, well, I don't like Alex Jones, but I like Paul Joseph Watson because Paul Joseph Watson talks truth about this, that, and the other, and he talks truth about it's the usual sort of truther type of thing. But they give him more credibility than Alex Jones because they find Alex Jones too exuberant. They find him too.
And I wonder if this is kind of, Nathan, you probably, and Julia, this kind of English accent bias.
Oh yeah, if you have an English accent, then viewers are more likely to lend more weight to what they're saying.
Yeah, you're immediately more intellectual and all this kind of stuff. I don't know, Julia, did you come across that at all?
I haven't heard of that before, actually.
It's not really a phenomenon as such. It's just something I think you tend to get in America at times. That you can put out some really bad information in America, but if you get an English accent behind it, it somehow sounds more credible.
I can see how that might be perceived that way.
Yeah, that's the Paul Joseph Watson thing. I think that's because I think for him, for all the Infowars, it is America that's the main market for that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He does seem less crazy, but I don't know. I've only seen a handful of videos of his, so to me, from what I've seen of videos of his, it seems like a kind of broken clock is right twice a day kind of thing.
Yeah. And, because he did start off with Alex Jones, didn't he?
That's how I remember it.
Yeah, he was kind of part of Infowars, and now I think he still does stuff for Infowars, but he's kind of doing his own thing as well.
Same with Mike Adams and various other people who have been very much increased in popularity through appearing on Alex Jones' show.
Well, like I say, I think we've said this before, but out of all of them, Mike Adams is just the most insane of the lot. Yeah, you read his blog posts, and it gets disturbing at times, the things he's writing. I think you're agreeing with me there, Nathan.
Oh yeah, definitely.
He's got the kind of sex appeal vote for a lot of people as well. I mean, he's always been quite a good-looking chap, hasn't he, Mike Adams?
And I think that raises his psychopath level a little bit.
Yeah, and like I say, it is just because it's not really posts or editorials, just they're rants and they're just these kind of trains of thought, and it's kind of it's really disturbing the things he just puts. You can tell he's just putting what's in his mind. He's not filtering it in any way.
Yeah, and that's why that from day to day you'll see him say one thing, and then the next day or 2 days later he'll say something that contradicts what he said in an earlier article.
Yeah, like I say, the thing with Alex Jones is he is genuine. He's got that charisma and appeal to a lot of folk. That people just say, oh, he's just passionate and all that. I mean, and he is.
He is, though. Yeah, he really does come across as very passionate.
Yeah, so does David Icke as well, though. I mean, he's still got a lot of followers, despite some of the ridiculously crazy things he said.
Well, I have, David Icke, we talked about the English accent phenomena. I have actually seen someone actually admit that that's why they like David Icke, and that's why they think he's trustworthy. And it was a Polish guy I knew, and he was, my Polish mate, he studied a lot, he was very much into, speaking methods. That was kind of his area of studying when he did English at school. And he was just convinced by David Icke. He said he speaks so well, and it's so convincing the way he comes across on that, and he genuinely believed. And then when I told him about, do you know this stuff that David Icke believes? No, he can't believe that. And then he looked it up, and he said, holy shit, it's unreal. But that's...
Yeah, reptilians only scratches the surface of, everyone talks about David Icke's reptilian ideas about the reptilians controlling society, but that only scratches the surface of the crazy of David Icke. You get a David Icke book and just read through it, and you can be entertained for hours from all the crazy that's packed in these huge books he writes with small print. It's actually, I think it takes a lot of talent to come up with the kind of bullshit he comes up with.
A lot of drugs. He always talks about the fact that he's spoken to ancient dead spirits and all that kind of stuff, and they've told him about this, that, and the other. And there is a lot of drug use involved. And I went to QED recently, and it's interesting because we had Suzanne Blackmore there this year. She's one of the premier skeptics over here. I don't know if, most skeptics.
Yeah, I know the name. I've tried to actually have her on the show before, but she doesn't. She just says she doesn't do podcast interviews. So.
Yeah, but she was talking about her experiences of drugs and the fact that if you go into it with a skeptical mind and you understand that it's an interesting psychological and physiological thing that you can experience, and as long as you've got the right mindset, you come out of it saying, "Oh, that was amazing. These drugs are fucking brilliant." But I understand that this is all in my head. If you don't go into it with that mindset and you start to believe the kind of things that you experience are real, you come out of it with a mindset like David Icke or certain other people within the so-called truth movement who believe that, for example, Nibiru is real, or that the earth is flat, or that Lord Stephen Christ is the second coming of Jesus.
Do you think drugs of any kind, hallucinogenic or what have you, plays any role in Jordan's content, spirit science?
Oh, definitely.
I wouldn't be surprised. It's on that kind of depth. But saying that, there are some people who have that kind of a mindset without the need for drugs as well, which is interesting in itself. I find that fascinating. That there are people with a predisposition to it. And I wonder if that's because they're a product of somebody, one of their parents, their mum or their dad, having been on drugs when they were born or something. I don't know. This is just me flying off the handle and making hypotheses on the back of it. But yeah, it's an interesting neurotype regardless of what the cause is, I think.
I was going to ask her, Julia, you said you came from a kind of hippie background. Do any of your family or relatives still, are they into spirit science, do you know? I don't know if that's too personal to ask or not.
So I'm from the Netherlands. My parents don't really watch a lot of English stuff, so they probably wouldn't have come across it. But they visit all kinds of alternative medicine, quote unquote, people, and my grandma wanted a pyramid for under her bed.
Oh, one of those.
Yeah.
Like the first time I kind of came across the spiritualist crowd was I went to, it was a close relative of mine, she had breast cancer. We went along to this breast cancer support conference, and I was stunned at the amount of woo that was on display there. It was really kind of quite unnerving.
Breast cancer support? Wow.
Yeah, it was like a kind of conference just for, all the support groups in Scotland. We got together in this hotel and, there's workshops and, just like any other kind of conference. But it was just amazing how there was like stuff like chakras and meditation.
Those are the kinds of places that woo peddlers thrive, is when there's an illness or a disease that somebody's going through.
Or it's caused a trauma on them or something like that.
Yeah, they exploit that. And they go after the emotions, and when people are the most vulnerable.
Okay, yeah, that's really bothersome that there's so many of that. And then in a conference like that, I was not aware that happened. And a breast cancer awareness conference. That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. There was some I don't know psychic healers, but there was definitely chakras and all that kind of stuff going on. And that was the first time I'd ever come face to face with people like that. And this is wasn't that long ago, and I was a full-on skeptic at the time. But should I say something? I just said no, I'm not. It won't go down well if it started here. So.
To kind of bring this back to alternative media,
Yep.
alternative medicine is kind of the parallel to alternative media, where they're skeptical of conventional medicine and not realizing that medicine that works is by definition conventional. There's no such thing as alternative versus conventional. It's a false dichotomy. I don't know if I'm using the right word there. But to be skeptical of the mainstream media because they're mainstream makes no sense, because what is media that accurately reports what's really going on? It's just the media. And if you want an alternative to that, that would seem to imply that you don't want accuracy in the same way that the mainstream venues are promoting.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, the kind of main claim of all media is just, you say they're controlled by the corporations, we aren't, but, as Maddox quite well pointed out, corporate control can sometimes be actually quite a good thing, because so much is on the line, you've got to get it right.
A lot of media in the U.S. anyway is, to me, quite disappointing. So
Yeah.
I don't know how it is in the UK, but what I'm used to in the Netherlands, when you have a news show, or just it's not a show, it's news. They don't give any opinions. All they say is this and this happened. This and this person said this. That person said that. There is no opinions. If there might be a show after the news where they actually bring someone in who might have an opinion, and even then the journalists themselves don't have an opinion.
Yeah.
So that's very disappointing in American news. So I understand that pushback, but alternative media is just not the solution to that.
I guess what I was trying to get at is what is the missing component that alternative media practitioners are looking for, where they want to call their work alternative. So they're skeptical of mainstream media, but a lot of times they can't articulate why they're skeptical of it, other than to use the word mainstream as an epithet or as a bad word.
Yeah. The mainstream media isn't bad because it's mainstream. There are issues with it because they're not being entirely objective.
Right, they're critical of mainstream media for all the wrong reasons, and what they're putting out is even worse.
A lot of the time, yeah.
Yeah, because there's no objectivity in alternative media most of the time. It is very much demonizing whichever is their most fashionable target for that particular day, for that particular week, for that particular year. Well, they've got their overall fashionable targets, such as Monsanto, such as general media. I mean, there's a lot of hit pieces on normal media or on police. Any kind of law enforcement is a common target.
Yeah.
So and it's very one-sided. There's no objectivity really. If they do interview anybody who's actually got a voice that is against theirs, they will characterize it. They will use the occasional little quote mine from them, but not actually put it in context. And it's just generally crap. I can't really put it any more than that.
I say that we've got sort of a weird problem in the UK, like we have non-impartiality. If you're going to be a broadcast news service here, you're not allowed to show any bias. And, at first I don't think that sounds great, but then, like, I remember, if you're doing a story on homeopathy, you have to have a homeopath on the show, and you have to have a doctor. And so sometimes you get the situation where it's a doctor, he's maybe not used to being on TV, and he can come across poorly. That's kind of that's one of the downsides of our media here. And that's kind of where Simon Singh, he kind of ran into problems with that as well. Because I think he criticised alt-med, and they tried to get him done for slander over it, but he eventually got it cleared. But yeah, so that's the problem we have over here. Because that was the shocking thing when I finally got round to watching American media, was just the bias is just not hidden at all in some of the mainstream reporting, which is kind of quite good in a way, because then the journalists can you can see their feelings, but then I don't think there's one ideal solution to it.
Yeah, we had Sean Otto on the show a few months ago, I think back in May, and he was talking about the problem of false balance and the problem of bias largely being he talked about the repeal of the fairness doctrine in the 1980s, and where the fairness doctrine was a regulation of the FCC that any content that went on the news, whether I think it specifically related to broadcast news rather than print media, but it had to be covered and treated in a manner that the FCC deemed equitable and honest and balanced, not balanced in the way the term is used now, but just weighing scales and devoting the weight of the discussion to the best evidenced side of the story. And when that was repealed, and there was no more regulation for that opened the door for a lot of personalities to come on the scene, like Alex Jones and Rush Limbaugh and Sean Hannity and all these guys, to say whatever they want without any pushback from any regulatory committee. And that in turn paved the way for a lot of the alternative media we see today, like Natural News and InfoWars.
I think we can round it up there. This actually went on a lot longer than I thought it would. So, I think I think it's working out quite well. Like I say, excuse me again. I'm struggling with a cold here, so if there's any coughing come through on the recording, I sincerely apologise for it. But thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll be in and out of the show a lot. It's in the hands of Nathan now. I think I've mentioned I put a few ideas your way for future shows, Nathan, and I think you've got some of your own as well, don't you?
Yeah.
All right, and
I think the more ideas we get from everybody, the better.
Yeah, so leave ideas if there's any subjects you want us to talk about, any films you want us to see, or anything like that. Excuse me. Any suggestions for anything at all regarding the show or improvements in it? Apart from good cough medicine for me. Excuse me, this is just... you can start to wrap up now. I'm going to go and have a cough fit again, so back in a second.
Alright, well, I guess I'll wrap it up and say I hope you enjoy the rebirth of Trolling with Logic. Hopefully it'll be a rebirth that lasts for a sufficient amount of time.
Forever.
I hope it lasts forever. I hope we get more than a few shows before we die again. I hope we don't die again. So it's goodbye for me. Everybody else can do their farewells, I guess, in their own way. Thanks for joining us.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye. I'm really awkward at this. signing in and signing out. I'll get more smooth at it. I'll come up with a
Well, I woke up this morning with a head full of poison and a snake got eyes that I can't see. Forest for the trees. And I won't believe it till I see it on TV. I've got ears that don't hear. Words don't come in clear. So I'll sit back and watch it all just disappear. Now we're standing at the end of the world, my friend, and there's nothing we can do about it now. Yeah, we're standing at the end of the world, my friend. We're gonna watch it all burn down. Yeah, we're standing at the end of the world, my friend. There's no place that I would rather be. Yeah, we're standing at the end of the world, my friend. We're gonna watch it on TV. Standing at the end. Yeah, we're standing at the end. Oh, we're standing at the end. We're gonna watch it on TV. Yeah, we're gonna watch it on TV.
I will be here to help out as much as I can, and so it'll give me great pleasure to kind of do this sort of handing of the mic ceremony over to a person you're quite familiar with. You're still fairly new to the show, but I think everyone can say I think the mic's going to be in good hands. Nathan, here you go.
Thank you. Thank you. This is Trolling with Logic for October 30th, 2016. Welcome to the show, everybody.
Yeah, it's good to be here, and as I say now, Nathan, you've got the dubious, I don't know if it's a burden or an honor, it's a bit of both at times of being the new host, so everyone please be nice to Nathan in the comments.
We'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and yeah, so with that, Nathan, shall we, well, I'll just try and get this out of the way. So, as you probably noticed, the team has changed up quite a lot. Some of the old team, they just can't make it. Mortimer's got very pressing real-life stuff. I think if you're friends with Mortimer on Facebook, you know what I mean. I think he's going to make a video about it at some point. But we shall quickly get on to introducing the new look team and welcoming Jenn. How are you doing?
I'm not too bad, thank you very much.
And welcome to the show. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thank you.
And probably a sort of familiar face. She's called in a few times before. Julia, how are you doing?
Hey, great. How are you?
Oh, we're doing grand. And I think, like I said, also with the introduction, we'll just get a little bit of information each. So Nathan, give us a little bit of information about yourself to the audience, because I think they always wonder why we're speaking on these subjects and what right we have to speak on them. So I think we'll go with you, Nathan, first. This is your introduction.
All right. Well, I went to college in Southern Oregon to study journalism as my major and philosophy as my minor. So I've got a good...
He full well knows that a lot of what he does is to sell his products. And I mean, he always sticks in a product advertisement on the end of what he does now, doesn't he? Buy this new, this, that, and the other. So he's got a vested interest in keeping up appearances. So I don't know. I'm not 100% certain. I think a lot of these people might have started off believing what they believed, and then kind of it doesn't matter anymore now because they're doing so well at it.
Well, I woke up this morning with a head full of poison and a sneaking suspicion that the end is coming soon. So I pulled back the curtains and I looked out the window, only to discover that my fears are coming true. Yeah, it's true. Now we're standing at the end of the world, my friend, and there's nothing we can do about it now. Yeah, we're standing at the end of the world, my friend. Gonna watch it all burn down. Yeah, we're gonna watch it all burn down.
Right, and hello everyone. Welcome back to Truly Will Logic. I know you didn't expect to hear back from us so soon, and yes, this show is pre-recorded. I'll go quickly into the reasons we're back. Mainly, we did an interview I did an interview a few months ago with the Committee for Skeptical Inquiry, and I just found out the other day that they've published said interview, and so we just thought, yeah, we better do something. And also, the show's going to be changed up a little, as you can already see, doing all this pre-recorded. And yeah, so I think the first big change is, like I say, I won't be around to host all the time. College is just demanding too much of my time.
And the false balance problem that you see in a lot of media.
Alright, great. And Jenn, here's your little soapbox moment now.
All right, thank you. Well, I first got into skepticism probably because I've been a long-term skeptic of religion in general, and from that, I also had a boyfriend who was into conspiracy theories, so I got to see firsthand the whole 9/11 truther movement, anti-GMO, etc., from my ex, who was constantly looking into this on a day-to-day basis and telling me the new conspiracy theories, and he was very much into it. And at one point I also bought into that kind of stuff before I actually had time to start looking into it properly. And from that, of course, I saw a lot of people like Alex Jones and Mike Adams and various other people in that particular movement firsthand, and got to understand the kind of rubbish that gets pushed on you, the kind of completely unskeptical rubbish that gets pushed onto you through those particular movements and circles, and that got me into skepticism itself and into joining a skeptics group, which then grew my interest in understanding things in on a more rational basis.
All right, cool. And Julia, time for your introduction.
Right. I have a biology degree. I recently, actually, just last month, got my master's degree, so I'm really happy about that. How I got into skepticism is, well, so my parents are kind of hippies. They've been I've had a very kind of new age woo kind of thing growing up around me. Like I wasn't vaccinated as a child, things like that.
All right.
But I already always was an atheist. I never really believed in a religion. So when I got on Facebook, I joined a couple of atheist groups, and through that, actually, I started to also question the New Age stuff, and also through my degree, started to learn about immunology and how vaccines work, things like that. So that I learned a lot that way, and I want to bring that further to other people as well.
And so Nathan, you're now officially the host, so take it away. You've got the agenda there.
Yeah, first on the agenda is Jack Chick, and Jack Chick is a notorious Christian cartoonist who died a week ago today, October 23rd. He was 92 years old, and he spent a huge portion of his life publishing small religious tracts known as Chick tracts. They're everywhere. Most people are familiar with them. Most atheists and skeptics, anyway, are familiar with them. And
I'm just going to butt in here. My first experience was when I was very much when I was in kind of, I don't know, well, when I was in school, basically, we got handed them by the teachers. Because they would have evangelical ministers come to our classes sometimes to warn us of the evils of, and it was mostly Dungeons and Dragons at the time, and still never played, but it was a lot of that, and there was some stuff about heavy metal music. I remember that as well. Yeah, just to add another little anecdote, you've heard this one, I know it, but this is when I got into serious trouble in school. He was
a mix of knowledge and background on reporting on current events and things that are going on in the world, and also how to think logically and reasonably and critically. That's where philosophy comes in. that's my academic background, and there's not much to say about me other than my academic background in terms of qualifications.
And so, how did you get into the whole skepticism thing?
I read books shortly after I started college in my freshman year. I read books by James Randi in particular, and that got me interested in skepticism. It occurred to me that there's not a lot of critical thinking in the media these days, and skepticism and critical thinking about the world is a good asset to have for any journalist, and that's something I'm really passionate about, is bringing a level of a more rigorous level of accuracy to the discipline of journalism, and encouraging
Daily Mail.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm very critical of alternate media, which we're going to discuss on this show, I think.
Yep.
And citizen journalists, who are people who have no background in journalism, who are going around saying they're journalists, but in reality they're conspiracy theorists.
Yep.
Who brand themselves as investigative reporters when they're not, to lend themselves legitimacy.
Yep.
And I'm also very critical of the mantra that's taught in a lot of journalism schools today, that there's no right or wrong answer to anything, and everything's equal.